Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Rahul. I live in London. I like to go for walks here whenever it's not like a terrible weather. And you'd be surprised, on the evenings you can actually see the stars. In fact, you can even see Mars if you like know where to look, which I think is pretty cool. In any case, when I look above, into the skies in London, just above the light pollution, just above like the hustle bustle and things, I get to the state where I like start wondering to myself, like, where did all of this come from? Like, where did I end? How did I end up here in the first place? These are very timeless questions that all humans have probably asked in some capacity, some point in their lives. Whether it is everyone living on the planet right now, or perhaps ancient generation people way before us who are looking into the sky, into the stars for answers, whether it was direction, or whether it was just wonder. I'd like to talk a little bit about how I derive my inspiration by looking at the skies, which is a bit of a nerdy topic, but I hope you like it. So basically, if we consider like our shared history, which is from the skies, from the universe itself, about 13.7, 30.8 billion years ago, a common science kind of belief is that it's all started from the Big Bang. In the Big Bang theory, basically what happened was the fundamental laws of the nature and initial particles kind of came out of that. You had the strong nuclear force, you had the weak nuclear force, you had the electromagnetic force, you had the gravitational force, and then you had all these kind of particles that initially started off, which, in the science kind of terminology is like gluons. You had like quarks, electrons, neutrinos, that kind of stuff. And that was like the initial piece. That was where it all kind of started from. Initially, we gradually had like this thing where like protons and neutrons kind of emerged, and gradually over like many long times, like thousands of years, like thousands is not like even that much in this case, but more like 200-300 million years after the Big Bang, stars started to emerge. And they started to emerge because the hydrogen that came from the protons and neutrons suddenly came together, forming stars, essentially creating factories of the universe. The factories that would create all the heavier elements inside through a process called nuclear fusion. So hydrogen combined become helium, helium combined with other heliums and more hydrogens become, kind of adding up together, become like oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, all sorts of things, iron, and eventually what you'd have is massive collapse of the stars. And this was happening everywhere, all corners of the universe. And as the star kind of massively explodes out and kind of is done with its life, it forms something called the nebula. These are like essentially the ancient souls of stars, which have all sorts of materials inside it, whether it is hydrogen, you have carbon, you have oxygen, you have nitrogen, all the kind of ingredients that kind of is all about life, iron, things like that. You suddenly have this place where the universe is filled up with these kind of things, and in their kind of own little micro pockets, these heavier elements are now a new breeding ground for more stars and more planets and things like that. If you really fast forward like to our kind of local region, we also had the similar thing going. We had a lot of this dust, this after star dust that settled and eventually kind of came together over long billions of years, and then eventually came to the point where like it was rotating, and then that rotation caused planets to form. It had the sun in the middle, and suddenly you had what we have, this solar system, our solar system. And the third planet in was Earth. It was a molten rock at the time. Studies have shown that something collided earlier, a very long time ago, onto this planet, essentially our original Earth, if you like, and it essentially created the moon as a result of it. So it took out a huge chunk of that kind of initial first planet, if you like, of Earth, and that initial chunk then started to rotate around Earth, and eventually that became the moon. And over time, as Earth cooled down, the heat inside from the planet started to come out of the planet through rocks that kind of releasing kind of gas, volcanoes, icy comets crashing onto Earth. That all of those in combination led to possibly the water that we have in our planet. And that led to life, ultimately. Life is essentially started off as like a chemical thing that was able to replicate itself. Eventually, our kind of initial ancient ancestors were able to photosynthesize for the first time, and that nourished, enriched the planet Earth with its atmosphere, with its oxygen and everything, and completely changed. You can almost say that was probably its first climate change in a way. But that ultimately kind of created a whole new kind of planet, which allowed single-celled organisms to transform into multi-celled organisms. And that eventually led us to a place where, you know, the reptiles came about, and the planet, like on the lands, you had dinosaurs that reigned the Earth for a long time. We hear that there's a massive asteroid that hit the planet Earth at the time and wiped out all the dinosaurs from those times. And from that emerged the mammals. There's so many different kinds of mammals that have existed. And over time, over a long time, eventually that gave rise to the great apes. And from there, it came to the point where, you know, humans came around. And then, you know, about 12,000 years ago, we collaborated on unprecedented scale for the first time in Eastern Turkey, modern day Eastern Turkey, in a place around called Göbekli Tepe. For the first time, humans collaborated, something never seen anywhere before in the whole universe. This kind of activity took place, and that kind of brought the initial rise of civilization, one after another. The Indus Valley civilizations, the Indian civilization, the Chinese civilizations, the Mayans, the ancient Greeks, all of them kind of eventually showed up over time, only to lead us to this point where we are, you know, sharing this one home in our planet together. We all have the power to wonder about this and interpret it how we want. Some people might choose to interpret it as, oh, okay, we're pretty insignificant. But I think on the flip side, if you look at it from the completely opposite end, it could be said that everything that has happened has ultimately, you know, bound by the laws of the nature, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, the gravitational force, the initial particles. These are the things, these are the initial orchestrators that essentially led everything to life and to us and to our capability to think and imagine a world that we are part of, or the universe that we are part of. You could even say that the universe is one of the most incredible inventions is the human mind, or a mind in general, or intelligent species, or the intelligent mind in general. One that could perceive what I'm saying, one that could perceive the whole history of the universe. You don't necessarily need to know all the equations and everything, but if you can kind of appreciate this narrative, and you can appreciate how everything culminated to this point where you can appreciate it, then suddenly you might find some inspiration in this, and you might not feel so little or small or insignificant anymore, because everything had led ultimately to us. And you know, being part of that journey is a pretty important one, because it's through the conscious mind that the universe is able to see itself through us. And as one human to another, maybe who might be watching this, I'd also like to communicate one last idea for this video. You could probably say that being a good human and treating others with respect and maintaining their dignity, doing the best you can possibly do in most of the situations that you come across, and being the best to yourself and believing in yourself is probably one of the most grandest things that could take place in our universe. And there's about 8 billion possibilities of that can happen right now. 8 billion people, 8 billion stories, 8 billion possibilities, and that's something nobody can take away from us. Of course, not everyone has the same kind of privileges that, you know, some of us have. I certainly know, I'm very aware of that kind of privilege I have, and I don't take it lightly. But I find it very inspiring that I can be part of this trajectory and part of this story. And I think when you have that kind of blessing from the universe, from whatever it is, then, you know, the least we could do is come to appreciate how the very expression of our life, the very existence of our lives is an expression of the universe. And with that in mind, I hope you like this video and you can hopefully kind of derive some inspiration on why it is amazing to be a human, and why we should always kind of, you know, respect and admire our kind of position that we have, and see where we can go with it. My name is Rahul, and I will see you next time. I don't know what I'm saying.